In front of us, we have an interpenetration where we have a square prism penetrating a half cylinder. We have our front view here at the top and the top view at the bottom. Therefore, this picture or this drawing has been provided to us in first angle. So what we need to do is make use of our top view to determine the depth of the penetration on the front view. So when we start, we need to now draw a light construction line with intervals of 30 degrees onto the half cylinder so that we can see where we need extra intervals on the curve to be able to determine a proper curve on the front view of our penetration. Therefore, what we need to do is we need to now go and draw an angular construction line from the center of that pyramid at an angle of 30 degrees. So therefore, I have to go 180 plus 30 gives me 210 degrees. And then from there, we need to now go and draw another 30 degree interval. And that means that it is 210 plus 30. That gives us 240. And we also need to draw an interval to this corner of our prism where number 1, the top part of the prism, penetrates the cylinder. And then from the center, we also need to draw a light construction line to number 4, which also touches the edge of our round or half cylinder on that side. So what we need to do is draw in a light construction line now on those guidelines that I've just created so that we have a reference from which we will work. And then I can clear these guidelines. And this is what we end up with on our top view. So therefore, what I need to do now is make sure that I project these intervals now to my front view. And at the front view, we will then see where each one of these numbers will be projected to in its depth. So what I want now is to take number 4. I'm just starting at a random number. So from number 4, I'm going to go and project a vertical light construction line straight up. And then I know that number 4 is this one here on my front view. And I need to just extend this angle of my front view, which is at an angle of 30 degrees, and therefore I can just draw a light construction line now 30 degrees towards this construction projection that I have created coming from the top view. And all that I need to do is make sure that they connect there, and then I can clear the construction. And the next step is to just draw a little dot where the penetration happens. So that would be the intersection of number 4 on the front view and number 4 coming up from the top view. Okay, so there we have our first intersection, and that one will obviously be number 4. So I'm just going to label that number 4 so that I know when I use it on a later stage. Okay, now what I need to do is get number 1. So I do the same thing with number 1. I project from number 1 90 degrees straight up, and I take it indefinite till more or less there. Then again, the same process, use the angle, which is 30 degrees, and then project that angle then from number 1 onto the projection that came from the top view. And we can now erase the excess and plot a reference point there at number 1. So we copy number 1 and add its label there where we are going to do the intersection so that we do not get confused. Say edit, clear all constructions. Now we have number 1 and 4 plotted. The next one what we need to plot is number 3. So I'm going to see that on my top view 3 and number 1 falls on the same projection line all the way up. So all that I need to do is now project number 3 at an angle of 30 degrees here on my front view and draw a light construction line from that projection onto number 1's interval or intersection, because we know 3 and 1 on our top view hit the surface of the round cylinder at the same place. And if we projected that straight up, That's the point that we have here as an intersection on our front view, and I can plot a dot there to indicate that's number 3, and I'm going to quickly clear the unnecessary lines, and then I will copy the label number 3, and now we have all of the 4. Oh no, we haven't done number 2 yet, so let's go to the top view. Number 2 is here right at the bottom, and you will see that number 2 goes right to the center of our half cylinder. Okay, so the projection of number 2 on our top view goes all the way to the edge of the half cylinder, or the center of that cylinder. Good, so we can just now recognize that number 2 is going to be aligned with number 4, but it will just project further inward. So I'm going to use my angular tool, and then I'm going to give myself a light construction line that is extending number 2, and all that I need to do now is make sure that I draw a light construction line to indicate that point. I can clear the construction line there and plot the dot for number 2. And now I will label that intersection number 2 right over there. Good. So now we have all 4 of the corners labeled. Okay. So what we need to do now is to determine the profile of the curve from each one of the corners, number 1 to 2, 2 to 3, and then to 4, and back again to number 1. But we can't draw a solid straight line from number 1 to 2 and all the other corners, because this is a curved surface. On our top here, we obviously see that it's a half cylinder. So whenever a straight prism interacts with a round surface, we will have a round profile in our answer. And therefore, I need to now determine additional points to know exactly what the curve would look like on my front view. So what I want to do is go back to my top view, and therefore I now see that here is a intersection which represents number 4 here, but number 4, as you can see, will be now in the back half of my circle. So anything that is on below the center line on the top view will be in the front of my cylinder on the front view, and everything that is above the center line on my top view will be hidden detail at the back of the cylinder in my front view. So therefore number 4 will be hidden at the back of the cylinder, and all the other numbers will be in front, on the front side. So now what I need to do is go to this interval of 30 degrees that I've created, and I now can take that intersection straight up to the front view and draw a light construction line indefinitely, because we don't know exactly how far up we need to go, and then also go from that intersection all the way to on a 0 degree to the left, which will then bring me to this point and that point of my prism's edge. So I'm going to use both these intersections on the edge of my prism, and we are going to project that now up to the top view, of the front view, from the top view. So I'm going to do this first intersection. So it is now the projection from side 1 to 2 on the prism that I need to do. So I'm going to project it all the way up to the edge here, because it is hitting the edge of side 1 to 2 over there, and then I just make sure that it stops right there at the edge of number 2. And now we also need to follow the same angle. As we saw, this one was 330 degrees, or a slant of -30 that we have to draw from that intersection. So I'm going to go 330, and that will give me the angle at which I must project this construction now towards this projection that came from the top view. So I'm going to shorten this line to intersect there, and I'm going to clear the construction line. And now what I will do is just give this another name so that you will understand exactly what I did with that projection. So I'm going to call it A, and I'm going to move it to its proper place. So here is A, okay, and I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to show you that A is projected onto this side, side A1, 2, and then we projected it straight up to the front view. That will give me then A right here on the side 1, 2 of my front view, and then A follows down with this line all the way to here, and we complete the loop. So that is A, and we can plot the dot for A. Okay, so now we have A taken from the top view to the edge of our prism, all the way up to the front view's edge of number 1 and 2 of the slanted prism, and then with the angle of the prism we just projected that A all the way to where the depth of A would be on our front view, and that depth comes straight up from A here on the top view. Good, so now we have determined A, so we now know between 1 and 2 we have number A, or letter A, and we also want to now have an intersection of this line, and what I'm going to do is use a light construction line and again draw it straight up to my top view to where it hits side 2, 3 in this case. So to 2, 3, there is 2 and there is 3, so that's the side that it hits, and I am going to shorten that line, and now again with that slant of 330 degrees I'm going to go and draw a light construction line. Now the length we will determine just now, there's the angle of 330 degrees, and now I'm going to just cut away the excess onto my front view. So now I know that for this one we call this A, and then I'm going to call this one over here A1. So therefore A1 is the second projection that we took. This was the depth of A, the original A, so we know that A1 is then on side 2, 3, and we project it all the way up to the front view, and we know that that intersection right there is A1. We follow the angle of 30 degrees all the way to here, so we know that this intersection here will be A1. Now please note that A and A1 is the same depth, because if you now take this projection from the front view straight down to the top view, you will see that is where the original point A as a reference point will be. Now we go to the next one, and we're going to call the second one B. This reference point on the top view, we'll call that B. And we're going to do exactly the same projection from B. We're going to take a light construction line, place it at B, draw the line horizontally all the way through side 1, 2, and 2, 3. And then I'll just shorten it till it hits the edge there. And we're going to do the same as with A, just now number B. I'm going to take it from that side, which is 1, 2, all the way 90 degrees up to where it hits number 1 and 2 on the front view of my slanted prism. And I'm going to cut off the line right there on the edge. Then again, we know that the depth is the next distance we need to get, so we haven't drawn it yet. So let's draw it from B on the top view vertically up. That will give us the depth of B on our front view. And now that we have that projection, we can go back to this intersection here of B, and at an angle of 330 degrees or negative 30, whichever you like, will give us the intersection that we need. And I'm going to just shorten these lines. and then I will place the dot right there, and now I will label them so that it makes sense. So I've got point B here, and I'm going to copy it onto that intersection, that is B, right over there, and 90 degrees straight up on the same angle. We will now have B over here on the front view, on the edge of the slanted prism on the front view, and then B will also be right here on the intersection that we created in the end. Okay, that is how we got B. So now we actually have a curve that we can draw from number 1 through B and A to number 2. And we can actually draw in that solid if we want to at this stage, but I'm just going to draw all the labels for the time being. So I'm going to do B1, which is this point here. So let me just give it a name, B1. And we're going to take B1 straight up as we did with B from our intersection here on the edge. Make sure it is from that very intersection straight up 90 degrees. And it was the same side that we had here from 2 to 3. Now we need to do that here at the front view, and then draw the line right to the edge. And again, we already have now the depth of B1 because it's the same as the depth of B. And we're going to take that intersection and then draw a light construction line at the angle of negative 30 or 330 degrees. And we're going to draw that light construction line to intersect with this line right there, which is the depth that we projected from the top view for B. And just to make sure you understand, there's the dot that represents it, and we're going to place B1 now as a label where it's supposed to be. Let me just move this one a little bit and then copy it, and we're going to take B1, follow the line all the way to the front view, all the way to there, and then along with the line over here to this label or dot, and we'll label the dot as B1. Good, so now we have B1's position as well. Good, so we have now determined the curvature of A and B here at the front, and we know that it's going to meet number 1 and 3 here on our front side of the front view. But now we still need to determine these hidden parts, and to help us we have the center line at the top view. Now right here where the bulge of our cylinder goes to the furthest end to the left, that is where we know where the change happens. Everything on this side of the center line to that point, everything here, all of that will be in front of the curve of the cylinder, and everything that's above the center line number 4 and all of this part here will be hidden detail at the back. So now we're going to use this point here, which is the place where the change happened from what is in front to what is in the back. So I'm going to take a light construction line and place a light construction line from that intersection or center point vertically up. So you will see now that it lines up perfectly with the front view's edge. Okay, because that will give us the radius from the center to the very edge of our cylinder. So what we need to do now is to determine exactly where will that now start to become hidden detail. So I'm going to take this point and I'm going to draw a horizontal line now onto our prism, and then from there I just want to quickly make it there right to the edge, and then from the edge I'm going to draw it straight up. So I went to number 1,4, and therefore it will be number 1,4 here on the front view, and I make sure that it is hitting the edge right there. And then from that edge I'm going to go once again like before, go backwards and obviously it will only be to here to the edge of the cylinder. So I need to go and just make sure that it is at an angle of 330 degrees, and then I draw that construction line, and that is exactly where the depth of that will be. I just want to once again quickly draw that line right to the intersection. Okay, we can call this now C, so let's do that. So I'm going to go and place a label here that says C, and then I'm going to copy C so that it is possible to understand where the projection goes from C, right from there to there, and we follow that line now all the way up to the top view, up to the front view, from the top view to the front view, and right below B we'll have C. And then I will also label this point here C, because that's the actual intersection that we want. So therefore we know that this edge of the cylinder from the top down to C, that will be the part where the cylinder now makes its bulge, and you will have everything behind that point as hidden detail. So what we need to do now is leave that for the time being, and we want to go and draw in the solid lines of our arcs and the rest of our detail, so that we can have a clearer picture of the hidden detail that we need to draw. So at this stage I'm going to save, because I'm going to use the Bezier tool, and the Bezier tool sometimes crashes TurboCAD, so let's hope that doesn't happen now. So I'm going to make sure that I start right from the center of number 1, snap to B, and you will do this with a French curve on your paper. Snap to each of the center points and right click, say finish, and then I'm going to start from number 2 again, and I'm going to go to center of A1, from there to B1, and then to number 3, and right click and say finish. Good, and now I save before it crashes. Let's hope it doesn't. Okay, so there we go. Now we have a nice curvature of, or profile of, our penetration on the front side of the cylinder. We can also now go and draw in solid this part of the line from number 3, which is in the front, and then we know that number 1, if you look back at your top view, number 1 is in front of the center line, so we know that number 1 will be a solid line that we can draw from here to there. Okay, so now all that we need to do is add the hidden detail, and for that we already have determined point C. However, we still need to determine the bottom hidden detail. So what I need to do here is to make sure that I've gotten the projections that I need at the bottom of my cylinder and my prism as well. So what we need to do is we need to remember that point C that we brought from the top view showed us the distance from the center line on our top view. Let me just scroll down and show that part. So C we have projected up, and then we only project it onto edge 4.1, but we also need to project it onto this edge, which is at 4.3. So I'm going to do that next to create C1. So therefore I'm going to use my light construction line and draw a horizontal line to intersect now with an edge 4.3. I'm just going to cut it off right there, and then from 4.3 straight up we're going to project it to our front view, and we see that's exactly there where we now need to cut it off on the slanted edge of our prism. And as before, we now just need to go and draw that backwards to that line, which is the edge of our cylinder, or in line with C at the top. now just here at the bottom as well. So tab, our distance here will be 300 up to there, and what we need to do is just get that angle at 330. Okay, and there we go. I've made it a bit too short, so let's just lengthen it a little bit and then bring it back, and there we go. And now all I need to do is plot a intersection there, and we can now call that C1. So let's just do that as we drew. I'm going to copy that C and I'm going to place it and put it in its position there, and that will be C1. Okay, so very careful. On paper, these lines will be very close to one another because you can't zoom in and out like I do here on CAD, but here on this intersection we'll have C1. So I'm going to copy C1 and I'm going to go up to my front view, follow that line, and that's C1 right there. So I'm going to just put the label a bit higher than B1, just above it. So that's where C1 would be. We follow the line all the way and we will see that this is the intersection of C1, and we will just label C1 there. Good. Now we have determined all the intersections that we need, and we can now draw solid, the lines that needs to be solid, and hidden detail, those that need to be drawn hidden detail. I'm going to save quickly. Now I'm going to take my line tool and draw a solid line from the very edge of our cylinder all the way to the bottom of the penetrating prism, because the rest will be hidden detail. So from here to C1, that will be hidden detail. So I can do that right away. Go and draw a hidden detail line from here to there, and then I can do the same now from the top where the cylinder now is behind the prism to C at the top, and that's hidden detail. I can change the properties of that line so that it is more clear to see that it is in fact a hidden detail line. Go and place it as 0.3 millimeters. Now the intervals are more clear, and I will do the same here with the hidden detail on here. On a printout, this will just look better if I now have used this at the scale of 0.3 and always say a line. There we go. Now that looks better when it's on a printout. Okay, now we can also save once more and start with the Bezier tool to draw in all the hidden detail of the curve at the back of our cylinder, because we said that everything behind this center line here, which means number 4, and all these intersection points that we have will all be hidden detail. Everything in front will be solid. So now I know that I need to go from number 3 as hidden detail. I need to just quickly get the right tool, the Bezier tool, and I'm going to make it hidden detail. And then from number 3 I will draw a light construction line or curve to C, because that's where it's going to go around the edge of the cylinder, and then it will meet at number 4 at the back, and then from number 4 it will curve up to C. And make sure C snaps, right click, say finish. Now, whoopsie, that curve didn't come out the right way. Let's just say undo. Let's do just again from 3 to C1 and then to the number 4 at the back, and right click and finish it there. And then we're going to go and draw a curve from there to C right there, and then we will end it there at number 1 at the top. Make sure it snaps, right click, finish. There we go. Now the curve is correct. Okay, so we now have the curve of the hidden detail as well as the curve of the part that penetrates the cylinder from the front. And then we also need to draw a solid line now all the way, because it's a prism with straight corners. Let's just make the line back a solid line all the way now to number 2. And there we go. There we have a solid line coming from the edge of the slanted prism, which is number 2, all the way through to the back, which is number 2. And if we go now to our top view, we will see there number 2 was a straight line all the way to the very far right of our cylinder, and which is what we just did here on our front view. So that concludes the penetration part of our square prism to the cylinder or half a cylinder, and in the next video I will show how to do the development of both the main pipe, which is the cylinder or half cylinder, as well as the profile development of the square prism. Thank you very much.